Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most catastrophic chain reactions in all of history.
I mean, how does a single gunshot, just one, ignite a war that pulls in the entire globe? It sounds almost impossible, right? But back in the summer of 1914, that's pretty much exactly what happened. And to get how, we've got to rewind and look at the world before that first shot was even fired.
Okay, so to really get the explosion, you first have to understand the powder keg. And Europe at the time, it was basically a continent just tangled up in all these different alliances.
So Europe was split right down the middle into two big armed camps. They were all bound together by these treaties that basically said, if you get attacked, we've got your back. On one side, you had the Triple Alliance. That's Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. And then facing off against them, you had the Triple Entente, France, Great Britain, and Russia.
And this whole system was built on an idea called realpolitik. Think of it as realistic politics. It wasn't about friendship or shared values. It was all about practical alliances. And the goal, believe it or not, was to keep the peace by creating a balance of power. But what it really created was a kind of tripwire system. A conflict between just two countries could suddenly and very quickly pull everyone else in.
And then, on June 28, 1914, in the city of Sarajevo, that tripwire was tripped.
So the target was this guy, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was the heir to the entire Austro-Hungarian Empire. The assassin, a young student named Gavrilo Princip. And the whole point, the political goal, was to kick Austria-Hungary out of Bosnia and Herzegovina to create a new, unified South Slav state, what would later be called Yugoslavia.
What is absolutely wild about this story is how it almost didn't happen. I mean, it's this crazy series of mistakes and just dumb luck. See, there had already been one assassination attempt on the Archduke that morning, with a bomb, and it failed. But later that day, his driver takes a wrong turn down some random side street. He tries to reverse the car, and what happens? It stalls. And it stalls right in front of, you guessed it, Gavrilo Princip, who just so happened to be standing on that exact corner. You can't make this stuff up.
And listen to this. Princip's own words at his sentencing kind of showed just how chaotic this whole thing was. He actually claimed he wasn't even trying to shoot the Duchess, Sophie. It was just part of the chaos that changed the world forever.
So, that one event kicked off a month of high-stakes political maneuvering and ultimately total diplomatic failure. We call it the July Crisis.
And this is where that tripwire system just completely snapped. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Okay, domino one. Russia, who saw itself as Serbia's protector, started mobilizing its huge army. Domino two. Germany, Austria-Hungary's ally, saw that and declared war on Russia. Domino 3. And then just 2 days later on Russia's ally France. Domino 4. It was this insane cascade, just pulling one nation after another into the fight. The dominoes weren't just falling, they were collapsing.
So you have to wonder, right? Could this whole thing have been avoided? It's a question historians still argue about. Maybe if cooler heads had prevailed? Who knows? But the thing is, one country had this very specific, very detailed military plan that made a massive war almost impossible to stop.
Yep, Germany had a plan to win a war on two fronts and win it fast. But man, it was a huge, huge gamble.
It was called the Schlieffen Plan, and its entire strategy was built on one thing: speed. The whole idea was, okay, let's hit France with a massive lightning-fast invasion right through neutral Belgium. We knock them out of the war before that giant Russian army can even get its boots on and mobilize in the east. Simple, right?
Well, not so simple. The plan backfired, and I mean spectacularly. For one, the Belgian army fought back way harder than anyone expected, and that cost the Germans critical time. Then there was the German army's brutal tactics against civilians. It was actually a deliberate policy called Schrecklichkeit, which literally means frightfulness, and it caused this huge global outrage. But the biggest miscalculation of all? Invading a neutral country. That was the last straw for Britain, and that one act brought the full might of the British Empire into the war against Germany. Game changer.
So what started as a squabble in Europe was now exploding across the entire planet, pulling in new countries and opening up brand new fronts.
And Germany, well, they decided to double down on the high-stakes gambles. They started using their submarines to sink any ship heading to Britain, trying to basically starve the country into surrender. But that strategy, plus this infamous thing called the Zimmerman telegram, which was a secret memo trying to get Mexico to attack the US, that was the final push, and it brought a whole new global power onto the scene, the United States.
And while all this is happening, one of the original big players is forced to tap out.
A revolution back home completely upends Russia. The Bolsheviks take over, and they sign a separate peace treaty, pulling Russia out of the war entirely.
And the consequences of that treaty were huge. Russia had to give up massive chunks of territory. We're talking Finland, the Baltic states, Ukraine. But even more important strategically, Russia's exit freed up hundreds of thousands of German soldiers. And where do you think they all went? Straight to the Western Front.
So now, this wasn't just the war in the muddy trenches of France anymore. You had Italy opening up a whole new front against Austria-Hungary in the freezing Alps. And you had these huge, sprawling campaigns raging across the deserts of the Middle East, where Britain was fighting to protect its lifeline to India, the Suez Canal, and of course, those brand new, super important oil fields.
And the sheer scale of the destruction? It was something the world had just never ever seen before.
If you ask the French, the one battle that defines the entire war is Verdun. This wasn't a battle of brilliant tactics. It was a battle of pure, brutal attrition. The German goal wasn't even to capture the place, really. Their stated plan was, and I'm quoting here, to bleed the French army white. It's just a horrifying testament to what industrial-scale warfare really means.
And think about this. More than a century later, the physical scars are still there. I mean, they're literally embedded in the land. It's estimated that there are still over 10 million unexploded shells buried in the ground around Verdun. A lethal legacy, just waiting.
You know, the story of 1914 is such a chilling reminder of how easily things can spiral out of control. How a system of rigid alliances and these inflexible go-for-broke military plans can turn a regional crisis into an absolute global catastrophe. And it really makes you ask the question, right? In our world today, which is also tangled up in complex agreements and has even more advanced military tech, are our own tripwires any safer than theirs were?